Just a bit of quick background on our Action Research project. Across the FE sector, fostering levels of engagement in GCSE maths is one of the largest challenges we face as practitioners. Maintaining levels of engagement has become increasingly challenging due to the move to online learning as a result of COVID-19, although this has always been an obstacle, particularly regarding learners in the FE colleges. Students therefore often arrive at FE colleges with very little motivation towards maths due to experiences of failure and underachievement at secondary school, where they've had years of experience that have shaped their opinions about their low self-efficacy. These experiences can negatively affect student perceptions of education and reduce their motivation to learn in the future, and it can become increasingly difficult for teachers to help students change their beliefs. Our Action Research project was therefore based around raising our learners' motivation and engagement levels, and in turn, improving their rate of achievement. In previous years, we've practiced growth mindset during our induction periods, but we wanted to explore this further by trialing the use of a set curriculum or a scheme of learning amongst our participating cohort. We therefore had 9 teacher participants across 4 colleges in our network, which included Shipley College, Calderdale, Leeds College of Building, and Leeds City College, with around 166 learners involved in our project.
Okay, so in terms of how we went about this, the scheme of work that we chose was the Focus 4 resources from the website Mathsbox, and they are specifically targeted materials used for consolidation and revision of all the topics that are required to know in order to achieve a grade 4. So the resources are basically a collection of online worksheets and various supporting presentations that cover those 30 topics. So our teachers had the flexibility to use the resources in a way that suits them and their group of learners. So some teachers used it as a starter, some used it as a plenary, and some used it as a flipped learning tool. So it was slightly different for each teacher, but essentially they covered 6 key topics per session, meaning that all of the 30 topics were able to be covered in 5 sessions. So throughout the course of the trial, they completed the 30 focus topics 5 times, which is something that we thought would help develop that positive learning environment with a really clear structure. And then the other reason why we chose Focus 4 as the set scheme of resources was because with them being online, it helps form part of that blended approach that's really important to us, but also because we felt it would be suitable for remote delivery just in the event of any college closures, which of course we now know was a very necessary precaution.
Looking at our data collection methods, our research project used a mixed method approach utilizing both quantitative and qualitative data. And for the latter, we used thematic coding. In terms of the data collection methods, we decided not to use an observation schedule this year due to the difficulties with observing remotely via Google Meets, where most of our learners opt to turn their cameras off. We therefore decided to compile data using an initial student survey, teacher and student interviews, and an endpoint survey for learners in order to capture whether there were any shifts in the learners' level of motivation and engagement as the project progressed. Our staff participants also wrote a reflection piece to substantiate our data further. As you can see in the table on the slide, there was a drop in the learner participants responding to the endpoint survey when the colleges reopened due to the students focusing more on preparing and sitting their mini assessments for the tag process. Also, one of our teachers was not able to participate at the end of the project, hence those learners were not able to complete the endpoint survey.
Okay, so now we're going to get into the most crucial bit, I guess, which is some of our findings. So the trial of the Focus 4 resources proved to be a success, and it was really well received by both the staff and the students. And that was something that was evident throughout all the different stages of the project. And just one example of that was during the student interviews, where 44 of the 54 students gave really positive reviews of the Focus 4 resources. And we had many of the learners commenting that they'd been helpful or useful to their studies. And we felt that that's it's really quite significant that those 2 adjectives were used so consistently. It seems to indicate the actual value and the sort of learning that's taken place, you know, as opposed to maybe things like subjective comments such as, you know, I just liked them. So yeah, we were really pleased that the learners seemed to accentuate their actual value. So we've just put on some of the typical responses where the students have commended the resources, just as a bit of a quick snapshot for you to see. So as you can see there, the learners have emphasised that the resources have helped them, and they also seem to really like that it's focused exactly on what they need to know. That seemed to be a really appealing feature of the resources throughout.
Please see a couple of teacher reflections on this slide on the use of Focus 4 resources. The successful use of Focus 4 resources to improve learners' level of motivation and engagement was also echoed by all our participating teachers. During their interviews, there was a clear consensus amongst all the 9 teachers that there had been an increase in engagement since starting this project and covering the Focus 4 topics. Similarly, during the staff reflections at the end of our research, every participating staff member advised that they would continue to use this set of resources in their future practice. The next slide is all about the motivation of our participating learners. During our endpoint survey, 55 out of the 88 respondents reported an increased motivation towards their math sessions when they were using the Focus 4 resources. And a number of different reasons were provided to explain why they felt that way, which are displayed in the chart. Quick example, good revision and recap. It covers different topics and questions, helps them develop new skills. There was good progression and they found them enjoyable. It became apparent that the learners responded strongly to the retrieval and revision style of the resources, as this boosted the learners' perception of their progress when they were able to correctly answer questions from a range of different topics. This idea actually links very well with the research conducted for our literature review, which emphasized the importance of reaching short-term goals in order to maintain motivation.
Fab. So in lieu of having any achievement data available for these learners, we wanted to evaluate the impact on the learners' confidence when answering GCSE maths exam questions. So in the endpoint survey, we gave them a number of example questions from a range of different maths topics, and we asked them to evaluate how confident they would feel in answering each question should it come up in their exam. So as you can see on the image there, for each question, the learners were given a 4-point ranking scale from which they could choose the one option. And this table on the right captures the overall confidence percentages towards each topic question. So as might be expected, there was some variation regarding depending on each topic. But overall, the response was fairly confident, with just one of the questions, which was for angles, receiving a confidence rate below 50%. So across all of the 8 questions, the average response was 62% of the learners feeling either quite confident or very confident. So those learners had at least some idea of how to tackle the question. And we also thought it was really interesting to note that the not confident at all option was the very least common choice for all of the questions except for just 2. So, you know, while we might not be able to comment on the impact on achievement data until later on in the year, we like to think that this was a bit of an interim indicator. So what are our conclusions then? What does it tell us? So I think we said that the Focus 4 resources as a set scheme of work, they did have an impact on our learners' motivation and engagement towards their GCSE maths lessons. And one of the ways that was most apparent to us was that the majority of the learners actively engage with the resources, despite them previously identifying that they don't find maths interesting as a subject. So it was back in our initial survey where it was 54% of the learners said that they don't find maths as a subject engaging. So we therefore thought it was quite an indicator of the project's success that 72% of those same learners suggested that they enjoyed working on the Focus 4 materials, and then a further 81% found them useful or helpful. And the next one was that It's also really important to note that the resources were similarly well received by the involved teachers. And as we were saying earlier, all of them stated their intent to continue the use of the resources as the scheme of work after the project's completion. And so, that consensus is a really clear indicator of the impact and the value of the resources, not only at enhancing learner engagement, but also as a tool to facilitate teacher planning. So we had some of the teachers citing the flexibility of the resources as a formative assessment tool, because, as we were saying earlier, due to their non-prescriptive design, they can be used as a starter, a plenary as a flip learning resource, but they can also be used for things like stretch and challenge, and even for differentiation purposes. So we found that the resources ultimately aided the teachers with their planning, and it allowed them to optimize their time. And then the next thing that we found out was that some learners with a lower minimum target grade reported that the questions were a bit too challenging for them. And now that's perhaps an unsurprising result, given that the resources are inherently geared towards those working towards grade 4. But it was something that nevertheless flagged up to us in the project. So for a bit of context, the participating cohort, 23% of learners advised they were working towards a grade lower than a grade 4. So that meant that they couldn't always access the content without teacher scaffolding. So those learners were the small minority that found the resources unhelpful. And that just confirmed to us that the resources are best used with the learners with a grade 4 minimum target grade, unless it's for something unless it's being used for stretch and challenge.
Looking at the recommendations for maths practitioners, this is what we recommend. So following on from the conclusions, the first recommendation is to select the appropriate GCSE tasks. Having established the potential of utilizing these resources, teachers should take care to select the appropriate focus task according to the minimum target grade of their learners, so that the students can master the required topics needed to achieve that grade. Indeed, MathsBox offers focus topics and questions for each grade from 1 to 9, and so the teacher has the ability to cater to the individual and personalize the learner's journey. Furthermore, we recommend that the Focus 4 resources are paired with the Focus 5 resources for stretch and challenge purposes. The next recommendation is to use it for exam preparation. We propose that we run a 10-week program ahead of an exam series, such as the November exams, in which we again trial the Focus 4 resources. This would allow us to directly record the impact on the learner's achievement and gain empirical data that we are lacking this year. If the program has a notable impact on achievement and not just engagement and motivation, we would then look to repeat this ahead of the June exam series. The last recommendation that we have is contextualization. The leading researchers in this field, as well as our own maths teachers, have all accentuated the importance of contextualizing maths to further improve learners' motivation and engagement levels. Teachers should therefore ensure that they use the real-life examples when teaching maths, as well as relating to the learner's vocational courses. There should be a whole college approach to create a scheme of learning that embeds contextualization in both maths and vocational areas. To help achieve this, we suggest that during planning for the next academic year, both maths and vocational team members sit together and work on creating their scheme of learning, proposing effective examples that tie in maths and vocational areas together. Thank you all for listening to our presentation. Hope you enjoyed it as much as we did when we conducted this action research. If you would like to read our full report, please use the link to our Google site listed on the slide. This site has access to both of our action research projects. Johnny, Jess, and I will be here for another 5 minutes, so please feel free to ask any questions you may have. Thank you for listening.